So, welcome everyone to our thought leadership session on leading and lagging indicators of adherence. We're on a bit of a holy grail quest today. It's really getting at the nugget of how do we change the things that we do, and not just related to adherence, but behavioral overall. I'm Linda Brown-Gansert. I'm founder and CEO of RxPX, which is a digital health platform that helps address patient safety and adherence around the world. And I'm beyond thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Kathleen Martin-Guinness and Dr. Kenny Noguchi. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I might ask both of you to do a quick introduction on who you are and your work, and then we're going to go on a quest together today that looks at not only what are leading and lagging indicators of adherence, but why they matter so much, and how that also plays into AI and technology and how we're using them, and what we can do in our own work, whether you're a brand manager, medical safety officer, a researcher, a marketer, or just for your own purposes today is really looking at what helps us do and not do the things that we need to do every day to have our best health outcomes. So Kathleen, maybe I'll start with you for a quick introduction. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Linda. So I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia in the Department of Medicine and also in the School of Health and Exercise Sciences. And I've been working in the area of health behavior change for over 25 years now. And I'm really interested in how we can support people living with chronic conditions to manage and change health-related behaviors, particularly exercise, diet, and even medication. So thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Kathleen. And your work is world renowned, and certainly as a royal scholar and many other things, we're just so grateful to have you on today. And you are joined by Dr. Kenny Noguchi. And Kenny, can you give a quick introduction, please?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Kenny. I'm a postdoctoral fellow also at the University of British Columbia here in the Okanagan, and I work with Kathleen on many different projects. And the topic around adherence is really interesting to me because I'm interested in how we can promote long-term adherence to all sorts of health behaviors like exercise. And we know it's easy to start a new exercise program or a new diet, but it's much harder to sustain it over long periods of time. So that's what I'm really interested in, that long-term piece.
Wonderful. Yeah, it really is that sort of holy grail of, how do we start and keep going across all aspects of our lives? And I'm certainly really curious about that today. So first of all, when we're talking about leading and lagging indicators, I just want to set with a base understanding of what that means. And so, leading is really sort of a warning signal, isn't it? It's kind of an indication of, hey, something might be going off the rails here. Maybe we're at risk of not following the adherence and the steps that we want to be following. Whereas lagging is very much looking in the past. So here's what has happened. And a lot of medication adherence, you think about your medication reminder or your Apple Health Kit or whatever even wearable that you have, it shows you what happened yesterday, or it shows you what happened an hour ago, or did you take your medication or didn't you? And moving from that lagging definition, which is really where a lot of adherence strategies have been traditionally placed, and moving into leading is one that we're really going to explore today. Whereas, how can we help people understand themselves, their behaviors, and get in front of that to really help set those changes, whether it's motivation or capabilities or access, so that you can stay ahead of as opposed to looking in the past. Sometimes I think about those sort of leading indicators as, I'd love to have a little tool that would tell me, at 6:25 a.m., we notice, Linda, that every time you've got your running shoes laced up by 6:25, you're 80% more likely to get out there and go for that run. I'd love to have a tool like that that would give me just that little nudge to help me keep that streak going. So today we're really going to look at that marriage of leading and lagging indicators, how we're using AI to get into that leading space and really get deep into the behavioral change. That's all about that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why the three of us and our two teams started on this quest. And it has been for several years now. We've really been looking at this as, how can you really tackle adherence with technology? And how can you really make an impact on health outcomes for patients in a way that is not only very centric and personalized to patients, but also in a way that is comparable or apples to apples with other research tools in the world that we use. And so I want to talk a little bit about what got us started on this project, and where we are with the project, what we've done to date, and really looking at how we're trying to change the models from a traditional model of adherence to a future focused one. I wonder if either of you wanted to just give a bit of an overview about the research that we've started and why it's important to you.
Yeah, Kathleen, maybe I'll give you some, or you can share some background on how this came to be, and I can dig into the nitty-gritty.
Sure. So, Linda and I have been working together probably since about 5 years now, since the beginning of the pandemic. And back then, we joined forces because Linda was really interested in supporting people through the pandemic, knowing that they couldn't get out to face-to-face opportunities with caregivers, with care providers to provide them with that support. And so, with her innovations, we started looking at how we could reach a broader number of people, but more importantly, to provide them um, with evidence-based, meaningful support that could truly have an impact on how they were managing their health, with a view to long-term adherence. And over the past 5 years, we've seen just a tremendous um, increase and innovation in the AI area, which I think has given us opportunity to think about how to better tailor individual needs to individualized strategies to improve patient adherence and ultimately patient well-being. And over those 5 years, those opportunities have led us to the point and to the project where we're at now. So, Kenny, with that as a background, do you want to explain what we're up to?
Yeah, sure. And so when we talk about adherence, and I think we can probably unpack that as a first starting point. Linda, as you mentioned, we traditionally viewed medication adherence in particular as something that's a yes or no, black or white. Did you take your medication? Did you not adhere to the medication? And commonly in research and in real life, people can measure it with things like proportion of days covered, so the number of days that you have access to your meds, pill counts, and these are outcomes that matter. And I think everybody can attest to the fact that they matter. But we're really flipping the script here in the work that we're doing to focus on how we're getting to that point. More about the psychology of how we get to the point of adhering to the medication. And before I dive any further into it, I'll give you an opportunity to jump in if you wanted me to expand on something specific.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what would be interesting too is why do you think this work is needed in our sector right now?
Yeah, I think why it's really needed is because of that long-term piece. Really, I think it's really, like I said before, it's a little bit easier to start something and to get moving on something when you're really acutely motivated to do something, but to do this over time, over a long period of time, and to reap the health benefits over this really long period, it needs to be a constant effort. And so that's why we sort of need to flip the script of changing what's underlying someone actually just taking a medication or going to the gym, those individual acts. We need to flip how we view things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how about for you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I think why now? I think over the past 10 to 15 years, behavioral science has really come into its own. There was a lot of skepticism for a really long time about whether we could change people's behavior or whether long-term adherence to medication or many behaviors was really possible. And I think a lot of that skepticism came out of scientists, us just not being able to do a really great job of helping people change their behavior over the long term. But over the past decade or so, there's been a real turning point in behavioral science and understanding. We've always known it was complex, but we've been able to dial in on some of the key things that make behavior change complex. But I think even more so being able to match people's specific challenges with adhering to specific strategies. And that's been a real game changer. And I think that's where AI is starting to afford some of the greatest opportunities by being able to tailor and match these myriad reasons for non-adherence with these myriad strategies to support adherence. And that's where the magic happens, I think, is in that intersection when we can start pairing and really making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, very much agree. And, some of my thinking around this work really did start, 5 or 6 years ago when we first started collaborating, Kathleen. And at the time, I was getting very curious about adherence personalities. We do psychometric testing within our teams, and we do a lot of work around understanding, who we are and how we show up at work, and very interested in that. But I haven't come across a lot that really helps people understand their adherence personality. And why do I do the things that I do? Why, if my runners are on at 6:25, will I go out for a run versus at 7:15? And so getting to a better understanding of that adherence personality, I think, is one of the keys, and one of the aspects that we've been really working on is looking at all of the supports that are available to people and to patients, and how to help people just really understand themselves and what they need and how to better access that support. Um, so I wanted to dig in a little bit more around how we've approached that work. So what has our research project been? Where are we now? And what are the steps that we've taken?
Yeah. So I think that's a really great way to look at it is the different personalities, right? And how we conceptualize that is around what's called the COMBI model. And what the acronym stands for is capabilities, opportunities, and motivations that influence the actual behavior. And so we've been taking that approach in our research to see the different COM factors that relate to that lag indicator of taking your medication. And we sort of treated the C and the O and the M as those leading indicators, those initial hints that, okay, maybe we need to change these aspects so that people are actually taking their medication, adhering to whatever health promoting program that they're on so that they can live a longer and healthier life. And so, a good example, I guess, in practice of what the COMs could actually look like is for capability, for instance. We often gravitate towards knowledge, or psychological capabilities in particular. Is, for example, knowing about which foods are healthy or how to exercise, why a medication is important. And so those are really key factors in how we improve someone's capability. An example of opportunity, for instance, could be, say, from the social perspective. right? Do you have a supportive partner to help you on your recovery journey or to help you go to the gym or what have you? Those are really key factors there. So we sort of use the COM model as a way to put the patient first and have that patient centricity to look at their entire lives from a holistic perspective rather than just if they're an adherer or a non-adherer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the background steps to getting to this place have been extensive. I mean, you did a massive lit review. You've articulated sort of common research tools that are used in this area to kind of develop our own model. Did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. And so, as you can imagine, the wealth of evidence in this area is quite big. So we had to distill it down into really actionable pieces and get the right tools, as you mentioned. So one thing that we looked at was to very specific patient populations. What are some tools that can measure someone's knowledge or their health literacy, or what are some other factors that are related to behavior change. So we looked at their beliefs about medication, their reasons for and against taking the medication. We also looked at different kinds of opportunities and factors that relate to their long-term adherence. So this could be things like gender, right? We found that men are actually less likely to adhere to medication. We looked at income and employment as predictors of adherence too. Relationships with their healthcare practitioner. So these are all things and tools that came out of the literature search that we did that are very specific to the patient populations that we work with.
Mhm. Mhm. And then from there, really coming to the COM-B model was, I think, addressing some of the gaps as well, right? Making those connections between what we've traditionally done and what's out there in the universe and moving it forward. And I wondered, Kathleen, if you wanted to talk about, taking sort of what we have done and how it's applied forward.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things has been a mind shift, not just us, but I think across anyone thinking about adherence in general, that traditionally there's been a thought that, well, it's the patient. If there is poor adherence, it's all on the patient. The patients decide whether they're going to take the medication or not, and any failing is pointed at the patient. But I think that when we start taking this COM-B perspective, it forces us to look at the environment in which the patient lives. As Kenny alluded to, it forces us to look at sociodemographic variables, many of which are beyond their control, and to start thinking about how can we nudge the patient, how can we provide information, or how can we set up their environment to make it more likely that they're successful. And whether that's just even acknowledging that people of a particular gender or of a particular income level are going to struggle more, then that means that we can start setting up better supports and be more mindful of some of these lead indicators as well that might suggest that they're going to have an issue with adherence in the long term.
And what really excites me about this work and the COM-B is that so often, what we've seen in traditional approaches or what we've seen in our own work is that adherence is often just adding more jobs for the patient to do. And the patients have a lot of jobs to do, as do HCPs. And so when we can better understand, those capabilities and motivations, we can better understand what job to help someone with. And I wondered, Kathleen, if you wanted to talk about why making that change from lagging to leading, it has been challenging and it is hard. And if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the reason it's so hard is because behavior is so complex. And because I mean, we're just throwing this acronym around COMBI, capability, opportunity, motivation, as if there's only three things in the world that influence people's behavior. But if you go in and unpack that theory, and you speak to people who are trying to adhere to taking a medication. They will give you, if you speak to dozens of people, they'll give you dozens of reasons why their capability, their opportunities, or their motivations might not be so great. And so if we want to switch to using those indicators to predict adherence, well, then we need to have a handle on what all those things are. We need to recognize that certain ones are going to be salient for certain individuals, but not for others. And ultimately, we need a way of being able to measure them, to monitor them, and then to intervene. So I'm excited because I think we're at a point, and AI is affording us this point to be able to track all those reasons and to be able to measure them. It was just too much for scientists to try and track all of those different things in a single study was just way too complex. And so what we would often do is just choose a subset of participants that all had, two or three similar capability, opportunity, motivation challenges, and then we could track those few lead indicators quite simply. But now we're at a point where I think large volumes of data are becoming more manageable, both in the tracking, both in the analysis. And I think that sets us on a very exciting and a much more promising footing than where we have been traditionally.
And it's such an interesting and beautiful example of what can happen when you have research and industry and innovation and technology come together. Because there's a lot of discussion right now about AI and some of the fears around AI and well determined. And certainly how AI can be used safely in healthcare. But I think what this points towards is almost thinking in a way of, technology for good and AI for good, and how can we use AI safely within these types of research environments that are truly serving the patient and can take, as you're saying, Kathleen, that data that was previously too big or too diverse to really provide any personalized, actionable sort of insights right directly to the patient. And so it's an example, and this is, where the geek in me gets very excited is using technology for those purposes and using technology for good to really look at applying, rigorous and very well designed research methods into an environment that is accessible for patients and drives value to them in a way that is also scalable, because we can use, whether it's AI, machine learning technology to do that in a way that just wasn't accessible to any of us in the past, and certainly moving very, very quickly. When you think about how the the rapid pace at which technology could influence us and your own research, what excites you about the speed of that? So when you think about the work that we're doing right now, um, where do you see that going? And what are you excited about in that regard?
Yeah, I think I'm most excited about on the practical side, these individualized, personalized, tailored approaches to supporting behavior change. So I think we can really make big differences for a lot of people by taking that tailored approach of matching their challenges to adhere with proven strategies. I think as a scientist, I get really excited as well about being able to weed through all the permutations and combinations of challenges and strategies and being able to know with strong scientific backing which ones work best for which challenges, but also for which people. Like that's an added layer of complexity is that personalized element. And it's not something we've been able to do as scientists up until this point. So I see a lot of potential both practically and from a scientific perspective.
Great, great. And how about you, Kenny?
I think for me, it's I guess the things that lead up to all the factors that Kathleen mentioned is I think with advances in technology, we can get access to a lot of this data quite rapidly. I think that is one of the key factors is we can run all sorts of these analyses and iterate and constantly evolve quite quickly with the help of technology, which hasn't been done in the past all too well. Research is quite slow, and I think it's been criticized sometimes for being a little slow, but I think with the help of technology, it can really accelerate that.
Yes, and I think it's a perfect segue into, our next sort of segment, which is, how can AI help? And, the research that we've been doing is now been applied to what we call our AI buddy in our platform. So that very personalized buddy that is taking not only patient input, but also other data to really get at the nugget of those leading adherence indicators and how to take some of the jobs off patient plates of whether it is dealing with capabilities or opportunities, motivation, to really deliver those in a way that's highly personalized, private, regulatory compliant, but really is a beautiful marriage of the research that you've been doing applied into a technology environment where every single patient has an AI buddy that is really helping them along this not only adherence journey, right, but this life journey of understanding themselves and the supports that they need. So when we're talking about AI and our COM-B model, I thought it might be interesting to maybe do a case study of one or two patients and how we might help them. So I was going to throw two case studies at us collectively, and then just to talk through how we would approach it and how some of your research and applied within our technology environment could help. So Sally is a multiple sclerosis patient, and she's got very high capability, but somewhat low motivation and limited opportunity. So she's had a drop in her scores around behavior, but she has very strong health literacy and self-management skills, so quite high on the capabilities. But she's got some low motivation due to some concerns about side effects. And it's also very hard for her to not only get to her pharmacy, but she lives in a remote area. So with Sally in mind, and probably challenges that are very familiar to patients and people living with MS, how might we help Sally, both with interventions, and I can talk a little bit about how we would use the AI buddy to help with that.
Sure. So, well, Sally's an interesting case because often capability is what wipes out a lot of people. They don't think that they can do it. So that's fantastic that she thinks that she can do it. In terms of motivation, we can approach motivation on two fronts. There's, on the one hand, there's sort of that reflective, thoughtful aspect of motivation. And so we might get Sally to think about the reasons why uh, she should, or the benefits, more specifically, the benefits, what she would gain from taking her medication and weighing that against the costs if she doesn't. And so oftentimes when people lay those pros and cons out, it begins to tip in the favor of being motivated to experience those pros. Another thing we can do with regards to motivation is you mentioned that she's concerned about side effects. And oftentimes we just have this internal feeling. It's not even maybe immediately in our forefront of our brains, but just this feeling or this uneasiness about doing something, and that can impact our motivation. So in Sally's case, she might be anticipating feeling nauseous or feeling lethargic, and that implicit feeling can certainly sap motivation. So on that side, perhaps having a conversation with her care provider about things that she could do to minimize the side effects. Perhaps it's taking the medication at a certain time or maybe eating something with it to try and dissipate those internal sort of icky feelings that might be sapping her motivation. And in terms of opportunity, you mentioned that Sally lives somewhere rural, and I think that that affords the opportunity to look at opportunities for perhaps having medication delivered or sent to her, or how she can order her medication in a way that she's minimizing trips to the pharmacist on a regular basis.
Beautiful. I think that would all be really helpful. And Kenny, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I think I might have given this example actually earlier, but along the lines of opportunity, it could be around social opportunity. So identifying people that can help her, right? Whether it's her partner or other family members that can help guide her on this journey. And maybe that's something AI Buddy could do is help her think about, who in her life can best support her. It's probably what I would do too.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful addition. And as I think about Sally and her needs, and how the AI buddy could help, certainly the practical application of, can we help set her up and get the AI buddy taking the job of home therapy delivery off her plate? Absolutely. That's a quite a tactical one. So the AI buddy could, not only set up the schedule and such, but help put that in place. Similarly, the AI buddy could help with side effects for sure. And we've had many instances where, we can help people overcome manageable side effects that sort of get them over a tough point and then really maintain long-term adherence. And we've had some tremendous results in there. So certainly helping to manage those side effects and to understand whether it's a fear and anxiety or what she's really feeling about those side effects and giving her support around that. And then Kenny, I want to touch on what you said because this is so near and dear to my heart. And certainly our mission statement, "No patient alone," is why I started on this journey with RxPX. And so that social support is just so key. And even just knowing that someone else is going through this, in my utopian world, we would help Sally make friends and they might even travel to their local pharmacy together and have that social time as a way. But I think even virtually being able to provide some social support and know that she's not the only one going through what she's going through would have an impact as well. All right, wonderful. Okay, so let's meet Fred, and Fred is living with type 2 diabetes, and he has a high behavioral score, but has really scored kind of low on the capability side. So that is one of his challenges. So he's got, high motivation. He believes in his treatment. And he's got good opportunities. So he's got good family and friends support, and he's close to, his care providers and pharmacies. But um, really struggling with sort of new dosing instructions for his insulin and how to manage that, and just maybe education of his condition overall. So how could we best support Fred?
Yeah. So again, very interesting case. So I think knowing that he's motivated, that's fantastic, and he's got the opportunity. It sounds like it's really boiling down to an issue of confidence and knowledge about what he needs to do. So in Fred's case, what I would probably advise is to start the bar very low, to start with some very graded tasks, to start with some small things that he's expected to do on his own, and then to build up over time to things that are more challenging. So for example, I would probably also build in the social support that we've just been talking about and encourage Fred to find someone who can help him with these tasks, whether it's a friend or family member or even a healthcare provider. I think having him track what he's doing so that he's got a record of these small and then hopefully bigger accomplishments along the line, that can be very effective. Oftentimes people don't even realize when they're making progress, and to be able to keep track of that and to reflect back on it, to see what's working, to give themselves a pat on the back when they achieve, but also to learn when they're struggling. That can help them set up strategies to overcome those challenges in the future. So ultimately, I think a combination of things is providing Fred with some education to teach him how to do the things he needs to do to manage his diabetes, and then some things to build his own self-confidence that he can do it through some small steps leading to bigger steps, and also giving him that reinforcement and those high fives when he manages to achieve what he sets out to do.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that would be really helpful to Fred. And Fred reminds me of a educational theory called scaffolding, which is building upon knowledge. So starting with a small piece of knowledge that is understood, and then building upon that. And this is now centuries old, this theory, but it really reminds me of Fred, of as you said, Kathleen, starting from a point of what he knows and building his confidence step by step. And then where I go in terms of AI Buddy is not only the delivering of that education sort of step by step, but also helping to understand what's Fred's learning style, and is he more visual, and would videos be more helpful? Is he more of a reflective learner? How can we better tailor the content in a format that is also more aligned with who Fred is and how he learns? So I would also use the AI buddy around his learning style and how to deliver education in the format that would help him, really build his confidence around his knowledge in that. So just building on all the great things you said, Kathleen and Kenny, I wanted to see if there's anything you would add.
I think one thing that we talked about in the previous example, but I'll revisit it for Fred as well, is that creating that social support also has benefits for capabilities too, because interacting with like peers, they can share knowledge across each other, right? It's likely that the challenges he is facing are not unique to just him. And so they can have that conversation and support each other through. And the end product is Fred gaining new knowledge about his own condition and how to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it reminds me of a conversation I had now many years ago when I was at an industry event. And at the table I was at were probably 12 other pharma leader industries. People had spent decades of their lives working in, patient support and patient adherence. And I was sitting beside someone who we just looked exhausted. And I asked them, I said, well, what have you been working on? It looks like you've had a pretty busy week, at the end of the week at this event. And they said they were just launching a new program and a new brand, and what that was entailing, which is a lot of work. And we got on to the topic of patient support and patient adherence. And this person had been working in that area for 25 years. And so I took the opportunity to say, okay, so in 25 years, what have you seen work? And she sort of took a big sigh and she said, well, in 25 years, the thing that I've seen be most impactful, most effective, and longest lasting is peer support. And I found that so interesting. This is many years ago, and that wasn't the answer I expected.
Mhm.
But in terms of that long, long tail of adherence, and being able to make behavioral change, the importance of peer support, and peer accountability in there. So touching on what you said, Kenny. So on behalf of Sally and Fred, certainly I thank you, and hopefully we've given them some new strategies, and definitely we would want to include AI Buddy as a part of their daily support. But I really go back to, how as thought leaders in this area do we make the jobs that patients have to do easier? How do we remove some of those jobs from their overflowing plate rates and make lives easier, both for patients and their families, but also for HCPs. It's very much a win-win-win situation. So with that, I'm going to transition into a rapid fire, which is, our vision of the future. And if you could change one thing about pharma and digital health and our approaches to adherence, what would it be? And just one thing.
So I think it would be just to recognize the long-standing tradition of behavioral science and the theory behind it. And I know that sounds just so nerdy, and I am a theory nerd, but I think when people understand that there's a theory and all this empirical data behind behavior change, we truly can stand on the shoulders of giants and we can get that much further ahead than just trying to reinvent the wheel with the data that we're gathering right now.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Thank you. And Kenny?
I think I probably alluded to this throughout the entire conversation, but being really focused on the process rather than the outcome. We talked about how, taking your medication is important, yes, but as we just spoke about, all those factors that lead up to that point where people are taking control of their health are just as, if not more important. And so we need to think about how to get clients from point A to B, not just whether they got there or not.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And I think for me, and I am going to cheat because I'm going to say two things, but the first would be that the work that we're doing shows a really beautiful model for research and industry and pharma and patients coming together. I think what we've been able to do together is not only incredibly meaningful, but making a tremendous contribution to this field. And so, the model in which we're working, I think, is one that is very successful, and I would hope that others could engage as well. So that would be one of my wish. And the second is to help people understand that you can use technology and use AI in highly regulated, privacy compliant ways that can do all of these things. And in fact, it behooves us to do that for patients. And so it's might be uncomfortable moving from what is a sort of a safe traditional way into the future, but there are very much ways to use technology and use AI in ways that are responsible, that are good, that are safe and compliant and privacy and security based. So those would be my two wishes. And today, I just really want to summarize how we've looked at, lagging indicators, leading indicators, how you've taken that and applied it to your work around the capabilities, opportunities, and motivation. What an exciting sort of model that represents. And when layering that onto technology supports can be incredibly powerful in terms of delivering personalized adherence support to patients around the world. So I certainly have enjoyed today's conversation. Before we end off, I want to ask if there's anything that you wanted to share, Kenny or Kathleen, that we didn't touch on.
I think we've covered the gamut today. I really appreciate you making the space to talk about the theory and the application, and especially the complexity. But also leaving off on a very optimistic and positive note that despite all that complexity, we're at a very important time, I think, in history to really move the needle.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you both so much. The work that we're doing together, I think, has, for me personally, been some of the most meaningful work of my career. And I know our team feels exactly the same way. We have a wonderful team at RxPX that has been working alongside you. And it has just been such an honor to see this work applied and really making a difference in the lives of, as I said, patients and HCPs expertise, but also just how we think about research and how we think about bringing that into industry and applying it in a way that is really meaningful. So thank you both so much. It is just amazing to have both of you, Dr. Noguchi and Dr. Martin Guinness. So thank you so much for joining us today.